Call this meeting to order. It's December 10th, 6 o'clock. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We have a pretty good agenda to go through, so we'll get started. We'll start with the administrative items. We have the agenda that was sent out in the public. Does anybody have any modifications they'd like to make to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion.
Okay, thanks, Drew. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thanks, Brenda. Any objections to approval of the agenda? Okay, hearing none, the agenda is approved. The minutes were sent out after the last meeting. The last meeting, just to remind everybody, was in September because we did not have any presentations since then. So does anyone have any modifications to the minutes from the last meeting? Okay, hearing none, could I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Any objection to approval of the minutes? Okay, hearing none, the minutes are approved. All right, first thing on our agenda is a developer presentation. This is the Wawa that we actually last saw this back in 2023 in December, actually almost a month ago, or not a month, a year ago to the day. We're just shy by a day since we last had that letter go, because it was about a month after. So let me rephrase this. About 13 months ago, we saw the presentation. About a year ago, we sent the letter to the county for the presentation. So just, I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that this is a repeat presentation for specific areas that they'll talk about today. Ideally, we want to keep our comments constrained to the new proposal and for the site layout and relief sought. If we have to revisit, we'll go talk about what was in the previous letter after the presentation, just for the committee's awareness. But the goal is to focus on the new presentation today, not to rehash what we had heard a year ago. So, Mark, who do we have presenting the Wawa to us?
So we have Annie from Atwell Engineering here.
Okay, awesome. Annie, over to you.
Thank you. So let me share my screen and we'll just start with a quick update to what's changed since last year. So the layout is largely the same, building in the same place, canopy in the same place. What has changed is we have moved this activity space that was originally on Nevada and towards the corner of Hale over to the corner of Hale and Baldwin. The main purpose of coming back today is just to reiterate the relief and modifications we're asking for from the bonus program. We do have 2 code sections we just want to present again, so everyone's aware of what we're asking for. And I've kind of sectioned them into categories, so I'll just go through them all first and then we'll go through all the proffers. So the first one we have is for the landscaping manual and the Odenton Town Center Master Plan, Chapter 4, Section 3.1.7. So the Odenton Town Center Master Plan states that landscaping must be provided in customer entry and parking areas. The landscape manual further requires a 5-foot sidewalk and a 5-foot planting strip where parking directly abuts the building, and 50% foundation plantings along the building. So we are asking for relief to all of those landscape items. Next, we have requests for active frontage. We have 3 requests under active frontage. Chapter 4, Section 7.2.1 is the front facade and primary pedestrian entrances of buildings in the core and along active frontage streets shall be generally oriented to face the abutting street that is most designated for pedestrian activities and that serves as the main pedestrian way within the site or as the primary connection to the site. Chapter 4, Section 7.4.1a is commercial facades along active frontage edges shall have continuous building facades along at least 80% of the street frontage. On this property, Annapolis, Hale, and Nevada are all designated as active frontage.
Hey, let me just jump in, Annie. I got to take my town center hat off and put my presenter hat on. But you know, the reason why we're asking for that relief is it's an impossibility because of the fact that we're surrounded by 4 streets, active frontage streets. So we need some relief from that. Go ahead, Ann.
Actually, Stuart, that's a great point. Annie, as you're going through these, can you provide a why you're asking for the relief? So like the
Yeah.
first one, the 7.2.1, if you could just briefly summarize like why the relief. I think the second one makes complete sense what Stuart said. So if you could just add that into your walkthrough, please.
Yeah, so just to go back to the first one about facing it towards the main pedestrian street, that, you know, I think we've gone over the reasons before, again, why we've put it on Baldwin. There's apartments here, there's a development here, we're providing this sidewalk, so we feel that is a main pedestrian connection, although it is not the designated active frontage street, which is why we need relief from that. And we've also then moved this activity space over to this corner to really draw the pedestrians in from these adjacent uses and make this more the pedestrian frontage while it is not designated as that currently in the master plan.
And a lot of the reason to doing that also is concern that Hale Street may never be built.
Mm-hmm. So we've kind of moved this to be the really pedestrian area, but that's why we still need relief from the active frontage, because it's along Hale, Nevada, and Annapolis. And obviously we can't provide the building on all 4 streets. So it's really the reasoning for both the first 2 active frontage requests. And then there's a third one, which is section 7.4.3, which is the commercial ground floor facades that have face active frontage corridor pathways shall be transparent for at least 75% of the horizontal length of the building facade. Again, since we aren't facing these 3 streets, we need relief from that requirement, because we can only really face one.
Can I ask a question about that? The one that you are, is there going to be any of those sides facing an active frontage where it will meet the 75% requirement?
Annapolis Road will.
Okay.
And we'll show the renderings later on.
Just to be clear, Stuart, is this your project or?
It is. Well, I'm representing the owners.
So you recuse yourself on this evaluation, or what's your role on the call today?
Well, I am a presenter and I do recuse myself from any comments on the project during discussion with
Okay. Just to make it clear, Stuart, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. No worries. That's been the case the other 2 times we've been here as well.
The next section we have, which really, again, it kind of ties into, a lot of this ties into the building orientation. So I've kind of lumped these 3 together as relief to building orientation, because again, we're fronting 4 roads and we're orienting it towards one, but then that requires relief from the other sides. So just to get the chapters and sections on the record too, it's chapter 4, section 7.2.3. Buildings on corner sites shall generally be oriented to have their primary facades and primary pedestrian entrances facing the corner of the streets with pedestrian activity. And so again, we're on 4 streets here, which is why, as the function of a gas station, this is a little different. So we need the gas pumps up here, and we did look at alternatives, and it just doesn't work from a traffic standpoint of getting these trucks through the site. So we've kept this orientation, but then we still need this drive aisle for access. But that's why we've moved this activity space here and made a crosswalk into the back of the Wawa building, which when we get to the renderings does, really look like a front of a building. It's not just a pure back wall with one pedestrian entrance. So to really, again, bring in the pedestrians from here, that while it's not perfectly on the corner, it draws the pedestrians in. There's also, we went over this at the last meeting, that this is really the low spot of the site. And there's storm drain and drainage issues here that you would never put the building here. So that's why it's just not purely in this corner. And continuing with the building and orientation relief is chapter 4, section 7.2.7. The tallest buildings and or tallest features of the buildings shall be placed at the corners of the blocks to make the most effective use of space and prominence. The building corners at intersections shall be treated with prominent building entries, retail display windows, or other architectural features, creating an active pedestrian environment. So again, we can't put this directly on the corner, but we have made this pedestrian entrance, as grand as the front entrance to really still draw people in. We revised the front entrance up here, well, not purely at the corner, to be completely transparent in this vestibule. And there's some art decoration panels on this side to really try to still treat this corner as much as the corner piece of the building as possible architecturally.
Traffic coming into the convenience store is going to be along Hale Street, which is a major pedestrian thoroughfare on this side of Annapolis Road. And that's why the orientation of the C-store is important towards the residents and not the canopy. And the canopy servicing the people along Annapolis Road driving is up front. So that particular corner is set to draw people in, activity space, and then be able to use the convenience store.
Yeah, this use is really, you're drawing from these uses behind here, and the uses coming from Annapolis will more be vehicular. There's, once you go west down Annapolis, you're not really hitting any more pedestrian drivers to bring you over here. So they're really coming from this way, which is why we really focus the pedestrian on Hale and Baldwin.
So Annie, just to refresh our orientation of this, I'm sure it was discussed last time, but that bottom right corner, could you describe that again? What is there now?
We do not own that. And that is
Yeah.
a property that we did try to acquire. We were able to acquire the property above.
Yeah,
Because
I remember that.
We've
I was
all
wondering if that's constraining anything you want to do on this lot.
I don't know. We don't have it, so we haven't worried about it. And the county
Okay.
is trying to acquire it for the widening of the road, so it's sort of a moot point.
All right.
For this building orientation section, I'm just so I can understand, is this relief required because of the modification request to basically set Baldwin as the pedestrian orientation point, which is why these modification requests are required? I just don't quite understand why these are actually a modification request, because what you've proposed seems is consistent as long as that's where the pedestrian orientation point is.
And we need to present, we were asked to present, and you can comment to your letter to the planning and zoning. We're not exactly sure either. And it wasn't
but you're requesting these two things for a reason. And so I'm just,
Yes,
I'm
I
trying to
will
understand
say
the
some of
dependency.
these requests came, and it goes back to, I think, why we didn't present them the first time. We did not feel we needed them based on how the master plan is written. OPZ says that we need relief for them, and we had to present them.
And that's why we're here.
Okay, so I do believe that it makes sense if the modification request is to set the pedestrian entrance point where you've said, and there are then dependency modifications on that. That makes sense to me from a logical perspective.
And
Yeah, and
where
that's
we are.
really, a lot of these modifications are driven by the fact that we do face 4 streets, and again, with not owning this property and the kind of now the shape of what we do have, this building location really makes the best sense for a lot of different reasons, and then that kind of goes into a trickle effect of a few requirements that we need.
Yep. Okay, nope, that makes sense now as to why you're requesting these, because that flows. That's something I can understand now. So okay, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, to your point, it's not just we're laying out literally every section that it hits, and not just saying we're asking for relief, from the building orientation. We're giving you every section. So then the last one we have under building orientation is chapter 4, section 10.1.4.3b. Buildings located on corner lots abutting primary streets intersections shall have a customer entrance at the corner facing the intersection. So again, this main pedestrian entrance on both the back and the front is not purely on the corner, which is why we're asking for relief from it. You'll see on the elevations for this one, we did wrap the windows along here. So now this is all a glass front. So it really is, it's kind of pulling you from that corner while it's not purely sitting on the exact corner. So those are all the building orientation ones. Now we get into the maximum BRL setbacks, and we're asking for relief from 3 of these. Again, because we front 4 roads and we can't possibly meet the maximum BRL for every road. So we are meeting it for Baldwin. We're requesting relief for the maximum BRL from Annapolis, Nevada, and Hale Street. And then the last section we have is several parking requirements, which overlay each other and end up just as a, a function of where the building was placed for all those reasons. Now, in turn, this is why the parking is placed where it is, and we're asking for relief to a few of the parking sections. So the first one is Chapter 4, Section 4.2.2. That new surface parking lot shall, where practical, not be placed between a building and a public street or a major site entrance, nor shall parking be placed at corner lots abutting street intersections. Surface parking lots shall be placed to the rear, between, or on the side of buildings. We've placed most of the parking over here in kind of a parking lot fashion, but again, it does front Hale Street and Nevada, so we do need relief from that section. Chapter 4, Section 4.2.8 is that parking lots shall not abut OTC grid streets. Developments in blocks along OTC grid streets shall locate parking in the center of the block, permitting buildings to surround the parking areas along the street edges. So you have Hale and Nevada that we're asking for relief from that. Chapter 4, Section 4.2.9 is that parking lots for properties along OTC boulevards and OTC arterials shall minimize their frontage along the roadway. Parking lots shall comply with one of the following: placed behind the buildings so that the buildings are up against the road and parking is visually screened, placed beside the buildings that are up against the road such that the parking lot's shortest dimension is along the roadway and that the shortest dimension does not exceed the length of the building facade against the roadway. There's parking spaces up against Annapolis Road for that one. And then the last one for the parking orientation is Chapter 4, Section 10.1.2.3. The development in blocks between MD 175 and Hale Street and between MD 175 and Duncan Street shall locate parking in the interior of the block, permitting buildings to bring the parking areas along the street edges and create active street edges on at least 2 sides of the block. Parking areas shall not abut Hale Street. So while we do have the end of these parking lots adjacent to Hale Street, this will all this green area will be landscaped, and it is pulled back as far from Hale Street as possible. But we cannot fit a building in between the parking and Hale.
Hey, Mark, I have just a question on word definitions. Where it says parking area shall not abut Hale Street, is that considered to be a directly adjacent definition by the county, such that there is no gap in distance between the 2 objects, or does landscaping like this automatically disqualify the word abut, so they're not abutted?
So we do provide some type of guidance as far as that sort of relates to the frontage. So if they could do hedges or some landscaping, but again, I think the development division would interpret a parking lot adjacent to Hale Street. So it doesn't necessarily be right up to the sidewalk, but
Well, just to add to that, I mean, if the landscaping were just grass, that wouldn't provide much of a block for the parking area. So maybe, Annie, you can describe what the landscaping is.
Yes, and then we'll
get to
into
that in a second, Martin.
yeah, but just one more thing too is the idea is in this core area, the idea is to create a pedestrian environment. And so when you have parking lots adjacent to these streets, right, what is the threshold? 5 feet separated from the sidewalk, 10 feet, 15 feet. it sort of just gives us indication that it's still a vehicle dominated type of environment when you have those parking lots. And so the vision for this core area has always been having buildings line the street and having parking on the interior.
Yep.
So
Okay.
Right.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to, I reiterate the hardship we have on this specific property, especially without this corner. There's not much we can do to ring this entire site with buildings without having access to this property. George, did you want to add anything else before I get into the proffers?
I have a question, but on the side on the Hale, Nevada, where the green spaces, there is still sidewalk on that closer to the street side, isn't there? Or no?
Yes,
This-
there is.
Yeah.
And one of the issues is there's a couple issues. First of all, there's no guarantee Hale Street's going to be built right now. We had that presentation, and they're having difficulty with acquisition of parcels. And it's going to be at least 4, maybe 6 years before that happens. So there's a concern about the building being up against woods. There's a security concern there. There's a functional concern there. The green that you see will be heavily landscaped, and there'll be a feature at the corner of the proposed Hale Street and Nevada Avenue as far as visually, and it could be used as an additional activity space. Remember, we did have an activity space over to begin with over there, and we decided to pull it more to the corner to bring that corner at Baldwin and Hale together. So this is the
No, I
land-
just switched to the landscaping plan. So you can see this area will all be heavily landscaped. At the Hale and Nevada Avenue corner is a focal point. So while this possible future sidewalk comes in with the Grid Street plans, we have designed all this landscaping for that pedestrian route when that sidewalk does come in. But focal point plantings at this corner with benches and street furnishings over here to meet that focal point requirement. So it should be a seamless transition from this landscaping to when that Grid Street plan is eventually completed, if it is.
So pedestrians would walk along Hale Street towards the corner of the lot at the top of the figure there to access the building and then go around it that way?
Correct.
Yep.
And we're going
Would
to
they,
talk about.
would
Go
they be
ahead.
cutting through that?
No, so sorry, this doesn't show that crosswalk. So just to switch back without the landscaping. So the activity space sidewalk will connect to this corner.
Mhm.
And then this is where we proposed the picnic tables and stuff for the activity space. And then there'll be a crosswalk directly to, this is the major front entrance of the building on that side.
We don't want people crossing all over the place and crossing into the middle of the proproperty.
I would agree. I would agree
Mhm.
with you, yeah.
So
I
we're
was saying,
focusing
yeah.
them to that corner, to that pedestrian walkway and
Yeah.
in. And we know what people are going to do at some
Could-
point in time.
could that-
And once they do it and create it, then we'll put a sidewalk there if we
Well, I
need.
know, but on Hale Street, where that is, could it be a berm that would sort of act as a block as well as a deterrent for walking across that area?
Well, we're going to have heavy landscaping, and again, it's there's right now there's woods, so it's not going to matter too much at this point in time. But we're going to get to that area, that feature a little bit more in a minute. With the
Yeah, this
pedestrian
will
walkway.
certainly be heavily landscaped. This further exhibit.
All right, well,
Probably
before you get
gives
to the landscaping, does anybody have any other questions on the modification request? There were 13 of them. And so I just want to make sure before we leave the modifications to go toward your next topic, if there's any other detailed questions anyone has. Okay, go ahead.
To preface some of these proffers, since we do have landscaping and streetscape design proffers that we're getting into. So here's just a bigger overall view of what Odenton is currently. We did bring in the development from across Baldwin that is currently under review. And so here you can see this is all wooded. This connection will go directly to the apartments over here, which is existing. So all these people who are would be walking or have a direct connection directly across the street. And this is the activity space for the development across the street. So you're kind of creating a presence at this corner, which is, again, you know, more reasons why we thought this was a great corner for the activity space and that kind of area. To get back to our proffers, to start with the landscaping proffers, we've offered that the site landscaping will be comprised of at least 50% native species. Minimum of 50% of the trees will be 2.5-inch caliber greater, and the green area greatly exceeds 10% of the gross site area. The streetscape proffers that we are proffering, streetscape and urban design proffers that we are proffering, again, this activity space is almost double what is required per the Odenton Town Center Master Plan. On the renderings, you'll see that there are art panels along the side of Baldwin that will kind of, you know, give an art feature to the Baldwin side. This additional pedestrian entrance from Hale that we're bringing through the activity space. And then we've also talked about a possible proffer of the Hale Street sidewalk. Now, this is, it gets into again, the viability of the Grid Streets project and where that is. And so we've said it's a possible proffer for now. It's something we're still looking into, but that is something we are looking at.
Will the sidewalk be buffered from the road from Hale Street? Or
Buffered?
would it be up right up to the road, or how is that?
No,
The Grid Streets project is proposing all these sidewalks to be directly against the road, and then they have street tree wells.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
So the Grid Streets project by DPW, which is what we're following for all the sidewalk and road improvements, they have the sidewalk, a 10-foot sidewalk directly adjacent to the curb and gutter. But for street tree plantings, they have tree wells, which is similar to what is over on this adjacent parcel. I don't know if you can see this, but so they have the sidewalk right up against the curb, and then they have these tree wells for the street tree plantings. So there's no grass median across the full thing, or grass strip.
Here's what we've proposed. We don't know whether or not Hale Street, as a proffer we're proposing, we don't know whether Hale Street at this point will be or won't be built. We know it could be sometime after, hopefully, sometime after we have constructed on the property. We've talked about a couple things that we've tried to accomplish. The committee has always talked about combining properties, which we did the best that we could on that situation, and the corner that we didn't get, we couldn't utilize much of it because state highways or county roads is taking that property for Nevada Avenue. You also talk about connectivity, and right now, based on our construction, we are giving actually 20% of our property to the county for the Grid Street project. We're not getting reimbursed for it. They don't consider that a profit, but proportionality, we aren't really required to do any of the Hale Street or Nevada Street improvements. We are doing the Baldwin Street improvements. And what we're proposing as one of the proffers is to build that sidewalk ahead of time prior to the road. The land that will be on is land that we're proffering for the county so that they will have ownership to it. And that will give connectivity from Baldwin all the way down to Town Center Boulevard before Hale Street with vehicular traffic might or might not be built. So it's an opportunity again for connectivity of the community and the apartment complexes that are there, the ones that we reviewed, to have a sidewalk to walk all the way along and not come down Nevada and go in the middle of the entrance, but follow the sidewalk to the entrance of the Wawa.
Thanks, Stuart.
Just had comments of, I appreciate that that the activity space, it sounds like it exceeds the requirements based on the document that was provided. I think that the green space of that Hale Nevada buffer seems great I think what you said of acknowledging that what's there on Hill Street isn't there right now, but potentially it could be, so still accommodating design to acknowledge that and seeing that its traffic calming measures with those bumps out is really great. And yeah, so I'm in reading the document and hearing about there could be flexibility of if time comes, if Hale Street does get developed as hoped, potentially, if I'm understanding correctly, the green space could be updated to be maybe something else. And I don't mean something else as in like a building or something, because obviously not that, but maybe like activity space could be extended out from green, or is that potential or no?
You're talking about having an additional activity space over here.
If I know it's a big what if scenario of like if Hale Street had that development as the hope is a few years in the future and it becomes a more active location, that potentially could the green space be.
But the only thing, Abigail, is that corner there is by the parking lot. So it's not really adjacent to the building. I think when they moved it over to the left there, now it's by the building. If it's over to the right, you do something over there, it's kind of like in outer space. It's by the parking lot. I don't
I
know.
like where it is right now, of the activity space, like explaining like that kind of focal point of that area. I just meant,
I think to your point, and correct me if I'm wrong, but so, because this corner is a focal area, so we've put this required benches and plantings and everything here. So if this does become a future activity space, it would really be for, I would think more pedestrians walking along Hale or Nevada versus someone coming out of the Wawa and wanting a place to sit down and eat, which is really this activity space. When this Grid Street project eventually is done, when it is, this is really, a nice corner activity feature for more people walking up and down the sidewalk versus people that are really using the Wawa.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
right.
yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. And yeah,
Yeah, because there will be benches and nice planted area here. So I get what you're saying, and I think that definitely works. And it would more be an amenity for the community, really.
Yeah.
yeah, I thought that looked great.
Thank you.
Stuart, where's the artwork at?
So you want to see, okay, so we can get to rendering. Do you want to get to that presentation?
No, we don't have
Let's
that.
get through landscaping first.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
we let
sure.
Annie have time to talk about landscaping.
Thank you, Martin.
So
Yeah, Andy.
the landscaping is largely generally the same. We have not updated the landscaping for this activity space. We wanted to make sure we've settled on this activity space. And then we'll update this landscaping. The relief we are asking for from a landscaping standpoint is the foundation plantings and the 5-foot planting strip in between the sidewalk and the parking spaces. I'm sure many of you have been to gas stations, and that little planting strip in front of the building just ends up with trash. And that's why these gas stations just don't like to have it, or convenience stores don't like to have it. So we've provided additional landscaping elsewhere on the site. We have plenty of additional landscaping and we exceed the green space required. So we're just not providing it directly adjacent to the building.
So previously you stated that you were going to have an excess of plantings by 14 units. Do you still anticipate 14 being the number, or is it higher or lower?
It still should be around 14. If anything, the stormwater management has changed, that it now needs to be underground. So if anything, it's more, but because we haven't fully revisited, I didn't want to commit to a number.
Okay, that's fine. And actually you answered my next question, which was going to be, how do you see the impact of stormwater management with shifting that activity space? Do you see, like, since that is the lowest point on the property, what is an activity space made of? Like, what's the ground?
So this will just, this would be grass, and then the sidewalk, and this would be either pavers to match the sidewalk along Baldwin, or just concrete to match the internal sidewalk, and then landscaping around it. To get into the stormwater management is now just gonna be an underground system. You don't see on here, but the storm drain all connects through here to this existing storm drain. So it'll be underneath that activity space is now where all that drainage is going, and it will be piped.
Okay,
Is it
thank
just
you.
one storm drain that we're talking about?
Through, yes, the stormwater management system will all collect into one storm drain and connect to here. Now, there is improvements to the stormwater inlets along Baldwin for the surface road drainage that's in
Okay.
the public right of way. But on site, it will be one storm drain system that connects to the existing one.
Abigail, do you have a question on that?
Yeah, so if the area is gonna have the potential of more green space than usual, and then the fact that there's only one storm drain, is there feasibility of that bigger green space to allow for more bioretention design? More green.
Bioretention design isn't feasible based on the water table and some other, we basically did the soil borings after the last presentation and had to revisit the stormwater management design. So the bioretentions in that green area aren't feasible.
just can't
but
work
additional
everywhere.
landscaping is.
So, okay, so like even like porous asphalt, like in the activity space, that's not feasible either.
No, that especially needs a certain separation from the water table. So it's gonna be really gonna be a custom stormwater management design.
Okay.
We hit water at 2 feet.
Yeah.
Was covering for the parking lots discussed at all? Of just thinking about like heat island effect, the potential of like a covering for parking, of maybe like covering with like solar panel
Yeah,
ability to take advantage.
You know what? It sounds great and everything, but it wouldn't look good at all. And there's already pushback on the canopy that we've made adjustments to up front with the gas canopy. So putting more coverings on, doesn't make economic sense. It's not required. And it wouldn't be enough coverage to really generate much solar.
Yeah, these landscape islands in this area will all be planted, and there's shade trees around this area, the parking lot too. So you will get shade from that landscaping around the perimeter.
Okay. And then just one last question. Are those it's 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth.
Hard to hear you, Abigail.
And here, yeah, Abigail.
Oh, is it
There you go.
better? Okay.
Yep.
That the right side of the set of parking spaces, the one that has like crosses over it, is that a different type of parking? Like, is that
Yeah,
like,
those are going to be charging stations. Some of them will be
okay.
live right away, and the other ones will be as needed basis, but they will be already wired.
Okay. And are there any bike storage available, since you're taking advantage of the Baldwin area there? People might be.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a bike rack
Yeah, let me just,
somewhere.
Is that different from your last presentation? Because your last presentation mentioned a bike rack. Has that
No,
changed?
it's not.
Okay.
no,
so
it hasn't
that's
changed.
not going to come into our
It's
new
still
letter.
there.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Those are all my
And
questions.
the bike rack is a requirement, so it's not a proffer.
Anything else on landscaping in this design? Because I think you had the second picture as well. Is there anything else there that you wanted to show us?
Nope, that's it for landscaping.
Okay, so landscaping is covered by the landscaping manual, not not within purview except for the proffers. So that's just for the committee. That's how we would mention it is in the proffers. Okay, go ahead.
Jason, are you clear what those proffers were? Yeah.
I was going to go through and summarize the proffers after
Okay.
we saw everything.
Okay, good.
Annie, you want me to share my screen first?
Sure.
Because we're going to go now on, we'll show you what we've done in working with the county and trying to continue to upgrade the presentation of the building. Replace current share. I don't know if I have, uh-oh. Sure, where am I? You might have to wait for this. Sec. My apologies. I don't have what I want to share. So Annie, why don't you go, and I'm going to try to get this to bring up after we look at the building itself.
Okay, so I think we've gone through all the modifications. We've just gone back over the landscaping. Jason, do you need clarification on the other sections we kind of laid out for proffers?
Yes.
Do you want me, we've gone through all the proffers
All
and
the
the relief. Do you need any more clarification, or do you have any more questions on any of those relief requests or proffers that we presented?
Okay, so I can at least summarize what I've heard in terms of the proffers to make sure that
Okay. Yep.
that we got it, that I at least have it right. So
Okay.
all right, so for the environmental proffers, there's the 50% native plant species, which is proffer number 2. We have I'm looking for the tree proffer. So for the 50% trees greater than 2.5 inches, I don't see that as a proffer in the OTCMP 2016. Can you tell us where that came from as a proffer?
Yes, let me find it in there.
Then while you do that, number 3 is proffer number 3 in section 3.2 in terms of the green areas to exceed that percentage. So yeah, I was able to find those 2. I just don't see the third. Okay, the art is proffer number 2. And a pedestrian area provided the intersection of Hale Street and Baldwin, which is your public activity space. I'm seeing number 4 and number 6 to be tied similarly to proffer number 1. And so I need to.
Annie, did you write it down or something? Is this something you can?
Yeah, so the minimum of 50% of trees will be 2.5-inch caliber or greater. We're just tying to going above and beyond the landscape manual requirements for landscaping by tree size.
Okay. Okay.
So I had to relate back to that. To relate it to the environmental proffer, it's 3.2.9, just exceeds surface parking lot landscaping standards.
Okay.
So that's an increase in size and tree.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. That
Yep.
is something that I did not know how to tie it to the plan.
Yep.
So I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then 3.4.1 is the public activity spaces described in chapter 4. And so I'm assuming there's specific sections in the public activity space you're doing better than
Yeah, so
we're doing almost 2.5 times what's required.
yeah, the area required for the activity space has been increased.
Yep. Okay.
So that's where we go above and beyond.
Okay, so yeah, so the proffers then, Martin, there's the activity space exceeds, green area exceeds, the native plant species at least 50%, minimum trees of 2.5 inches or greater, 50%, art on the building, and then the pedestrian area which I'm tying into the activity space. I also heard, Stuart, that and Annie, is it an actual proffer you're making to build the sidewalk on Hale Street, or is that a potential proffer?
That is a potential proffer. We're still working with OPZ on is whether it can be a proffer or not. But so we wanted to present it as a potential that we're still working through if that's viable or not.
This is, excuse me, this is Andrew Hansen with a question on that. Did you have to perform the BPTA? And I guess is the reason you're not sure you can offer it as a proffer is because that might be required from that?
No, it's not required by the BPTA, but it comes into a proportionality analysis that the Office of Law has to get involved in, which is why it hasn't been fleshed out yet. We're trying to get an answer on it before this meeting, but we didn't.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Does anyone have any questions on the proffers or the modifications?
And yeah, I'm also ready before you put up the building.
Okay.
Are we all good, Jason, with the proffers?
I haven't heard any other additional questions. And I haven't heard from you that I missed any in terms of my accounting. So
No, the only one I didn't, and I think you said it was the art panels.
yes. So
Okay.
the art panels on the building. One question I have, and this is more of just a amusing in terms of thinking about that, the parking lot abutting Hale Street.
Mhm.
Is it like, what about using some type of art to actually create a divider such that it's not just landscaping, but there's an art context as well to divide the parking lot from Hale Street? I don't know if something like that actually is also is possible or meets the.
It'll look like
Or that
crap
division.
after a certain period of time. I mean, it'll really look bad. It's just, you know, I appreciate that as a comment. It's just not required. And, you know, we have the corner that we're going to be doing. We have the activity space, and then you'll see in a moment the panels that we'll be putting on the building, and that the community will be involved in what goes onto those panels. They can be changed on a regular basis.
Yep, that's fair. That's fine. I noticed in the previous rendering as well, like there is the blank space around the corners of the building where you said green planters no longer go in because they accumulate trash. Is there a plan to actually have seating outside the building as well? I didn't see anything in the notes if we had actually discussed that or not. And
There isn't any right now, but there will be seating in the activity space.
Yeah, so the seating proposed is picnic tables in that activity space, not on the sidewalk directly adjacent to the building.
Okay. So it's the only seating is the activity space. There's no seating directly around the building itself.
No, yeah, not directly around the building itself. There is the requirement for the benches along Baldwin, but those are in the right of way.
Okay.
So quick question, Jason, Annie, the picnic table, is it wood or metal?
I don't know.
We have not gotten that far in the
We haven't
design
gotten that
of
far
the
to
picnic
pick out
table.
treatments yet, Martin.
Make it metal.
We're trying to get our plan approved.
Make it metal.
Okay, we'll note that.
Metal will
Yeah.
burn people. They can't sit if they're burning.
Wear long pants.
In
I
the
think it should be
summer,
made of
when they want to
stone.
sit outside.
All right. You said you had additional items to show us, additional renderings.
Sure. First, I have something before
Okay.
before Annie puts up the rendering. And I got to do. Can everybody see this?
Says today's Odenton.
Beautiful. Okay, so this is what we're seeing today in Odenton. And many of these projects, by the way, the AutoZone's done. They've pulled out. They are not improving the space. They had a lease since 2015. They're not going forward. And by the way, it is not the county's fault. This is what we see when we come off the 32 into Odenton. This is what we see on the other side of 32 along Annapolis Road. Been like this for a couple years, but our project's not good enough, I guess. Again, what we see coming off the highway now, all these signs that people put up that are not legal. This is the old factory site. 2005, they started on this. This is beautiful. These are the warehouses right at the corner of Annapolis Road and 170. And they decided to put all these banners up. And I've filed complaints with the county. But again, these are the types of things that people see when they come to Odenton, and you want them to invest millions of dollars on sites. This is the corner of Town Center Boulevard and Annapolis Road. I hope the project that we reviewed actually makes it into planning and zoning for review. The project, behind that, you can see the village of the Town Center Commons townhouses. This is where our project will go, across from the firehouse. This is across from where we want to build this beautiful project, where this old auto parts building that was sold to a church has fallen totally dilapidated. They have signs gone. They have a food truck sitting in the front. They have these trucks parked on the side. And what we're doing might not be good enough. This is our firehouse that it's allowed under the Odenton Town Center. Tried to get it out, but they are allowed to have state highway operations on their site. So there are times when we're seeing piles of stone, oil trucks, tar trucks parked there. Now, right now, if you went by, they're finished that operation and they agree to grade the site with nice stones. And it's like that until the next time they come back. This was supposed to be the sheets that we all spent time reviewing and liked and recommended, but it may not go forward at this point in time. So this is where we are 30 years since the original 1994 Odenton Town Center plan. And I just wanted everybody to have an understanding of what's going on and how many times we've reviewed projects on these various sites that I just showed, not all of them, but many of them. Annie, you want to show what we want to put in Odenton Town Center?
Yes, so this is, and these are new elevations from the last time you saw. So I kind of want to go through what we added since the last time. And again, we improved these, so we're not asking for relief on the building. So the Baldwin, we'll start with the Baldwin side because that's really, where we've oriented the building.
Bottom left corner.
We added additional windows to have the apparent second story and continued this red line and the different brick materials on the top and bottom to really give it that apparent two-story on Baldwin. And we also, this is the entrance vestibule. From here, we wrapped the windows around. So this is a clear facade over here and added a door. Originally, there was only, sorry, this is the front. Originally, there were only these two doors on this side. We added a door that is facing Baldwin
Here,
now
wrap
on
the
this
glass
side.
around. This is also where we get our 75% of clear window along, and this is what would face Annapolis Road at this top photo.
Thank you. I was struggling to remember the word clear. Facing Annapolis, they've added additional windows here. We always had the art panels on one side. You got them on both sides now. And again, the red line has really been extended farther to try to make this two-story very apparent. And we've added additional materials. This is the rear side that is facing hail to try to spruce up this architecture as much as possible from every angle.
Yeah, two more art panels to the right. Different, excuse me, different surface treatments, and kind of brick. And we wanted to use the brick, and we also did that with the canopy because of the brick being utilized in the parking garage. Didn't necessarily want to use red. I think there's enough red brick that we'll see at that parking garage and do something different. But the idea was most of the treatment to be a brick look to it.
And this is the rear side that's facing hail, that those pedestrians coming through the activity space will see. You have the welcome sign. Again, you have a large glass entrance and large double doors. So it really doesn't feel like you're coming in the back of a building. It is a true two-sided entry building. And then this is the side facing internal to the site, to that parking lot area.
To the right will face the parking lot area.
Mhm. And then for the canopy, it has been revised to, if you remember, it was just a bright white before. It's now gray, and the Wawa lettering on the front has been removed. So I think this softens it a lot. It's got the stone pillars that match the building now. Again, while it wasn't a requirement, we went through with OPZ to really spruce up these architectural features to tie them into the building and kind of soften the look that you'll see as you're driving by.
And then the trash enclosure matches the building as well, which
Yep.
is one of the requirements of the town center plan. So it looks really nice.
And will all be screened except for obviously the doors where you enter it.
So by all accounts, they're number 1, 2, or 3 in the country. Food and Wine actually names them as a number 1 food convenience store in the country. We're bringing a quality project, we're giving a quality presentation, and we hope that it really gets other things kicked off in the Odenton Town Center. But we got to get things rolling, guys. We're prepared, we're ready to roll, we're ready to go. And I think that's it. Annie, do you have anything else? And then I can leave it to the committee for any additional questions.
Yeah, that's all we have unless you have any additional comments. And we're not asking for relief on these elevations. We just wanted to show you how much we've worked to improve them since the last round we came in.
Just one question. Is there any thought to why you didn't extend the art to Baldwin Avenue as well?
There's no room.
Over here, yeah, this, it's probably hard to tell the dimensions on here, but this side comes down lower over here. And then we had to put in the fake windows to get the apparent second story.
So I've seen artwork that is as small as like 6 inches by 6 inches. So I'm just, no room seems like an interesting reason.
Well, it is just, now you're just plastering the building with posters like that blue building that I just showed you on 170. And that's not what we really want to do. It's a nice clean look on here. And we have the artwork facing Annapolis Road where the community will get benefit from it. And we have it also facing Hale Street and the residential development that's all behind us. That too will get benefit from it. So I think it's enough. I really do. What's going to be facing on this side of the street, even though vehicular, there's people here, there's going to be a parking lot it's going to face. And it's a parking lot for the adjacent development. So I just think I hear what you're saying. You're right. It could be made any
Yeah,
size,
sure.
it could be made a different shape, but I just think it's a little overkill.
So I think that is a better reason.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So
I was,
the question
now
was-
I'm
was
just
more
looking
your
at
reasoning.
it too, and I think I mean, if it ends up anywhere, it ends up here, which is under the Wawa sign. And then I think you're getting cluttered at this corner.
Right. And so I think that says you've thought through why it's on those two facings and not around the building. And I accept that as a good reason.
Mhm.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. Does anybody have anyone from the committee have any additional questions on anything that you've seen? Okay. Hearing none, then as stated in our agenda, that this is now part of the public comment period where the public can ask questions and comments to the presenters. Does anyone from the public in attendance have any questions for our presenters? So we have 3 members of the public present. So if you do have a question, please just raise your hand or you could type it in and then Mark will recognize you.
I'm not seeing any action here.
Agreed. So last call, anything from the public? If not, we'll pull it back to the committee. Okay, seeing nothing, we'll close the public comment period for this meeting. So back to the committee in terms of what was requested. So just to just summarize the entire presentation. All right, so in 2023, we issued a letter that recommended approval for the project, specifically recommending approval of relief from the foundation planting requirement. Our reason was there was 10% more green space than required, and 20% of the site was being dedicated to the county for streetscape improvements. The OTCAC did request that the developer try to return closer to the 25% value for foundation plantings, but noted that the units was actually in excess of what was required. We also recommended approval of a relief from street frontage requirements because the site layout is not conducive to building placement on all of the active corridors. So we discussed each road independently and discussed it in our opinion. Basically, Annapolis Road, Nevada Avenue, to locate the building within or have the frontage requirements be met, it would have interfered with traffic management for the grid streets. And then if it was located along Hale Street, it would have interfered with stormwater management because that was the low point of the site, as we also heard during this discussion. Our letter also did request that if there were parking lot items that needed to be discussed as modifications, those to come back to the OTCAC if desired. So it does sound like that the county, at least for the parking area, did say that yes, this needed to come back to the committee in accordance with our previous letter. So that should not come as a surprise to us. In our letter, we did express 6 views on the previous presentation. It was well received. We appreciated the incorporation of numerous public comments because this is a project that has spanned multiple years as well as multiple different, basically different station owners, whatever the proper term is. But it wasn't always a Wawa. There were other private companies looking at this site, and public comments have been submitted over the years. So we noted that this effort really was trying to incorporate all of that feedback. We noted the layout was improved to address the concern for fire truck safety, which was a big deal for one of the previous proposals for this site. We like the vehicle charging stations and still encourage solar if feasible. And then we did also urge the developer to consider how the outdoor space would be used originally. And so it sounds like that this revised proposal with the activity space is also an answer to the committee's previous request to have a better understanding of how that activity space would actually function with the site. So in terms of the modifications, we did go through those in detail. I can go through each one individually for the committee if you would like. I wrote down the reason for why the modifications is being requested. So if the committee wants, I can go through each of those. There are 13 in total. And then there are the 7 proffers, 1 potential proffer, 6 on the books, 1 potential proffer that are currently being proposed to offset the 13 modifications. So the county did request that the committee actually go through per modification and provide a reason for why we feel like if we want to recommend approval of the modification, why we think that this should be granted. This is a request from the county specifically, which I believe we can actually honor in terms of now that we understand the reasoning for why the modification is being made. So I would open to the committee on thoughts or statements on all of this.
I think, Jason, for me, looking at this, you kind of have to, in my view, take these all together and look at how it improves the site. I think generally they've done a good job in trying to make the site meet the requirements or do the best they can to get close to those requirements. Making it attractive, making it accessible by pedestrians, avoiding conflict between cars and pedestrians. So I think overall, I mean, it looks to me like a lot of good things were added in total to make the site workable. So that's how I would look at it.
Thanks, Martin. Anyone else have comments or thoughts?
Andrew.
I agree with you, Martin. I think the modifications that were requested as far as updates, everything was presented well. There's a couple of one or two things, especially with the wastewater management. I wish there were more than one, but it is what it is. But other than that, I think it's coming along.
I'm not sure. Sandra, did you have your hands up?
I did. I particularly like the movement of the activity space to the other corner. I think that's going to serve the community well, and I like that relocation.
As do we. Thank you.
I know every time we have these meetings on these development proposals, I always bring up the solar panel. I think Abigail or someone brought that up today. I'm not sure what we have to do in the future to further encourage that, but I get, Stuart, what you're saying, that maybe it won't look attractive, but maybe there's some other way that can be done, to make it more attractive or not so visible, depending how you angle the canopy and so on, might help. But it really is something that is a lost opportunity in my view. We got a lot of space there that we could put solar panels on, and given what we're dealing with in terms of climate and all that, every little bit helps. So I'll just make a note on that again.
I'll say it looks pretty attractive on IKEA's parking lot, so wouldn't say it's the attractive side, but
Just depends where IKEA is. It's not in the Odenton Town Center. And attractiveness is an issue with everybody. And Martin, I know that Wawa is aware of it. They don't have a program for it, but I know that they're exploring it. And if
Okay.
it's implemented, they will. It's not planned right now, but I know across the board, they are trying to figure out if they can do it with those canopies. The biggest thing with the canopy is it's fixed at one angle, and is it the right angle? And you don't want to start putting a lot of more rooftops on these sites.
Yeah,
these
I
covers.
understand
So,
that, yeah.
but I know that they are looking at it.
There are some parking structures, and I can't give you the road name, but it's near 97. There's a road that kind of parallels that. I can't tell exactly where it is
I
now.
know what you're talking about too.
All right, do you? It's a canopy that they have solar panels on it. It's a parking area.
That may very well be where the train depot is. The light rail depot.
That's further north. It's not
Okay.
quite that far, yeah.
I know I've seen it. I'm just trying to figure out where, but got it. I got it.
Yeah.
This is Andrew. Just two things. I especially appreciate the design. The building's attractive. I like the forward thinking of having the electrical vehicle, not only the existing chargers, but the reference for the future chargers. And I will add on a separate note that I believe Blue Oaks North Odenton will have solar panels. So you will have some solar panels in the Odenton Town Center, just maybe not on this location.
And on the parking garage, a win, Martin.
Yep, that's right. That's right, Stuart.
and one more comment in terms of I brought up like the porous asphalt for parts of the parking area. It looks like the CVS on Odenton Road has some of it, like some of its parking spaces are like that. So I'd be curious to understand like if it's the same issue or if they came across that issue when they were building theirs, of something potentially worthwhile to think about, or thinking about those folks with their building, how it was done.
In my experience, it's Andrew again, it's very site specific. You have soil that changes inch by inch and foot by foot. So if the soil borings here showed a really high water table, then I suspect that it's just not an option, because you don't want you need to be able to treat the soil. You need to be room to be able to treat it, and unfortunately, it just doesn't sound like it was an option.
It's not a soil. We're going to have to use soil cement at some point in time to solidify everything. So it is an issue. And I appreciate everybody's valued opinion and seeing at things that work at other sites. And we've explored those things. We have people smarter than us. I don't decide, Annie doesn't decide, but We have folks, stormwater management design folks that do that. So we've explored that. We've gone through iterations of it, and you plan, you design what you want to use, and then you end up with what you can use, and that's where we are right now.
Okay, any other comments from the committee before I summarize? Okay. All right, so, all right, brace yourselves. It's gonna be that's a long summary. Okay, so of the modifications, the landscaping manual modification request is outside the scope of the OTCAC because it's a county landscaping manual. So we're not going to discuss that here. There are 3 active frontage requirements. So, or modification requests. Number 1 is a modification request to basically set the intersection of Baldwin and Hale Street as the main pedestrian connection, even though Baldwin is not an active, it's not considered to be an active road. That is the most likely place for pedestrians to enter. And therefore that the first modification request is to set that pedestrian point, which then creates additional modifications that will need to occur for the building orientation because of where that pedestrian point is now set. Another active frontage requirement is because they cannot build on all of the active frontage streets. It doesn't make sense to have a building that literally is shaped like a donut on this site. We're actually a weird bit out donut because of the quarter that isn't actually owned. So that there's a modification request there. And then lastly, there is the modification request because it's simply you can't have active frontage on every side of the building. It's so Annapolis Road will meet the requirement, but they're requesting relief from Hale and Nevada because it's just you can't meet the requirements for all 4 sides of the building. It's just not feasible. I discussed the building orientations. The maximum setback is not possible on this site because of just simply how the site is located, and basically the site becomes useless if you try to do a maximum setback for all 4 roads. For parking, again, it's an impossibility for the site due to the 4 rows where 3 of them are considered to be active. It's not a requirement that's feasible for this site. For the Hale and Nevada parking side, it's the building style to make it work for the site to have actual flow, and traffic management is what it sounds like. You cannot have that requirement for Hale and Nevada. Then there is parking requests for facing Annapolis Road, and then parking that abuts Hale Street to make it as which both require modification requests. The Annapolis Road is to have parking against the building, and then the abutting Hale Street is to have parking against the building as well as for the parking lot, but there is still going to be a separation of those parking lots from the road itself through landscaping. So it sounds like that the plan has attempted to mitigate as many of these items as possible. That would be the visibility items, which I think is what the master plan is really concerned with, is are you directly seeing a parking lot from the road? And with landscaping, there is an attempt to try and mask as much of that as possible for this type of site usage. So that's the reasoning that I listed off for all of the modification requests. And I would ask the committee, does this seem reasonable in terms of a reason for why we believe this modification, all these modification requests are warranted? Does anybody have an objection to that? Because I think I would use those as justification statements for why the committee concurs with those requests.
I think that's fair, Jason.
All right. Any other comments and an objection to that? Okay. So then to offset the modifications, there are 6 proffers with 1 potential proffer pending county review. I want to start with the first 6, and then we can talk about the potential to see if we want to have an opinion. There's the activity space that exceeds the requirement. Green area exceeds the requirement. The native plant species exceed 50%. There's an exceeding of the 50% trees that will be 2.5 inches or greater, which is in the landscaping manual. They're providing artwork on the building as well as a pedestrian area that actually does appear to be usable by the community versus just benches randomly scattered throughout, which is what we've seen historically. So I think from the committee's position previously on a lot of these seem to be very reasonable proffers. I did make a note that porous paving materials is a proffer that we like to see, but is just not feasible for this site due to the water table. So I think it is reasonable to say that there are some proffers that, while we usually list them off, we would like to see them, they just can't be done here. That's the proffers list of the potentials to build sidewalk on Hale Street. Did the committee want to provide any type of input on if we think that this is if we believe that this is a proffer that we would like to see regarding if the developer builds the sidewalk on Hale Street? Do we want to hold an opinion there?
Right. I'm not sure about that one, Jason.
Basically meaning if none of these exceptions can happen, if we have an opinion on whether, if they can't happen, we'd still like this project to, or the committee recommends for this project to still go or not. That's what.
No, I haven't even got to that point yet.
Oh.
No, it's more of as what Annie and Stuart said, is that they are in discussions with the county regarding if building a sidewalk on Hale Street is a valid proffer. Do we want to offer an opinion if we believe it is a valid proffer or not?
I don't think so.
Would that mean all the streetscape goes away or just the sidewalk?
Just the sidewalk.
Correct.
And it was on Hale Street.
Yeah. Right now, that road is, there's a question about what is going to happen with that road,
Mm-hmm.
if it's going to be built or not.
Okay. If it can't be built for this project, there's still capacity for in the future someone else to build it. Okay, then great. That's all I care.
Yeah, but it's more of, do we want to mention it in the letter or not? I could not put it in the letter, and that's perfectly fine. It's the.
I don't think it's necessary, really, because it's up in the air. It's like it might be developed, it might not.
Mark, can I ask your opinion on this? You were in those meetings with the county and planning and zoning. And we don't want to have to come back again.
Well, the
And
question, I think, Stuart, is whether or not it's a proffer. I think that's the question.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So again, our position on offering it as a proffer is that Hale Street may never be built. If it is built, the soonest is 4 years. And they're not on a 4-year track right now. They're on a 5-year track. We keep on moving the line from where they were a year ago and where they are now. So our proffer is to make sure that there's connectivity in the community. Okay, should that road not be built, and should the county decide that they don't want to build it, they could certainly make that decision to just scrap the CIP project. So again, we're not sure that we're required to offer it as a proffer, but if we were to, would that be an acceptable proffer by the committee? And I think that that's the question that we would like answered, and that the planning and zoning would like to know. And that would behoove us having to come back again to you all and delay this even further. So
Stuart, I wonder if it would be a proffer if the road wasn't built. And if the road was built, there wouldn't be a proffer. Does that make a difference?
say that again.
If the road isn't built,
Mhm.
would it be considered a proffer versus if the road is built, would it be considered a proffer? Does the building of the road influence the proffer status?
I don't know. That would be an opinion. I mean, as of now, they intend to build it, and they intend to, but they have acquisition issues, and based on what was presented to us, minimum 4 years, and again, we're a year past that 4 years. So it's in 4 years from now, 4 years from next year, versus us going ahead and offering a proffer if it's necessary to create that connectivity between the rest of Hale Street, and then
Yeah.
nobody has to worry about whether the road's built or not. At least
Yeah.
people can go, and that's a main thoroughfare, because you're also
Yeah.
going to have possibly a Starbucks next to us.
Yeah, So Jason, maybe it is a proffer from that standpoint.
Well, right, and so I think this is where my guess is, I'm hypothesizing here. I think this is where the county is struggling in terms of, is it a valid proffer? Because looking through section 3 or chapter 6, section 3, there is nothing in here that says building a sidewalk on your site is a valid proffer. But if you think about this from the goal and intent of the master plan to create a more walkable community, having a sidewalk on Hale Street for this site allows the individuals at Echelon or individuals at Town Center Commons to not have to walk on the road to reach this, like to basically reach the building on this site. So
Right.
we are making a more walkable community by encouraging this type of effort.
Yeah,
But technically by the plan, it's not a valid proffer. So it's more of, does it fit with the intent of what we want to see in the core to have a more walkable community, and therefore we would consider it to be one.
Say
Yeah.
yes.
And so that would be, if the committee says, yes, we think that would, that's how I would advocate. That's basically how I would write it up, is in something similar.
I think that's a good idea. It's my opinion.
So Brenda, you had said no, and so I'm curious if what I just said changed your mind or not.
What you said makes sense, but we're talking about things that are up in the air, things that might be 5 or 6 years down the line. Half of us won't be even here to make that decision, you know.
But the point is, if
like-
it is 5 years away,
Yeah.
then you don't have anything. So if they were to put this in before that, you would have that walkable part of the street, which would help. So I was going to say, if they're going to put the road in tomorrow, well, different discussion. But it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like 5 years away. So to me, you provide the walkability now as a benefit.
Yeah,
I
I'm not
know-
really
I know-
seeing a downside from this. That this just seems like a good thing all across the board. It's what the intent of everything is make it walkable and accessible. That's the first step, is putting that in there.
Yeah, I think Jason's point is, well, it's not technically a proffer,
Right.
but we're stretching that definition, I think, in this case, to broaden it. So in that case, I think there's some agreement that maybe this is a proffer from that context, Jason.
Or we don't, I can figure out a way to say it's like, while it's not listed as an official proffer, it does further the goals and vision of the master plan to make a walkable community, and therefore needs to be factored into the overall decision.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Okay. All right, so that's what I have in terms of content of the letter for the listing of the modifications. Other content is, I want to mention the stormwater management redesign, because we noted that, and that we understand that it has been revised because of further testing that was done since our previous letter. We appreciate that they did a good job with the site to make it more pedestrian friendly and usable by cars. That we noted that a lot was added to make the site workable with these changes. Specifically the movement of the activity space. We were encouraged and believe that will serve the community better, and so would recommend approval of that modification as well as its dependencies at that point. We're going to still encourage consideration of solar for the site and understand that it is an option if the overall would you call Wawa? What is Wawa here in terms? So I get the right noun. Stuart, what are they? Since that's their program, what do I call them? You're muted. You have to unmute yourself.
I'm not sure what your question is.
So I want to say that you said that Wawa has a program that they're investigating this.
Right, they're having a solar program.
So for this site, who are they? They're not the developer. They're not the property owner. They are the
User, the tenant.
Okay. So the tenant has a program where they're investigating solar.
Correct.
Okay.
And it can be, implemented in the future, but it's not
Thank
planned
you.
for the current layout.
Okay.
Oh.
I want to note that.
Okay.
And
I'm sorry, Jason, sorry, I just clarify, Stuart. So not for this particular project is it being planned or considered, but for some other development projects. Is that how you want to state it?
Not at all. It's
Okay.
being considered throughout the company for sites that would benefit from it.
Okay,
They haven't developed a program. I don't work for Wawa.
yeah, I
Okay,
know.
they're a tenant. Okay, so I can't speak for them, and I think a little bit you're asking me for speak for them. I know it's something that, Martin, that is near and dear to your heart. It's not planned for this site as of right now. To try to qualify it like you're asking me to, I think is a little unfair. We did
I'm just saying, yeah.
provide quite a few charging stations, which are way beyond what's required. So that's sort of how we've become, how we've utilized solar, or however you want to put it, affordable energy or whatever. That's how we've addressed it on this site.
The reason I bring up whether it's a possibility for this site is that if whoever is looking at it, they're going to have to consider the weight or the connectivity if in fact they were to come back and retrofit that awning or the
Not going to be done. I can just tell you, I mean, we're wasting a lot of time. It's just not going to be done.
well, that's the answer I want to know.
Yeah, they can come back if they have to later on to replace the canopy if it can't be but they don't even know what that would be to retrofit it or to build it that way, to accept something in the future, because they don't know what that program is.
Well, it's fair enough. I'm just trying to gauge
Yeah,
where the discussions are.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no problem.
okay, so and then we appreciate the attractiveness of the building, the EV charging stations. And that was everything for the content of the letter. So now we are down to the question that Abigail had asked us to, which is, I'll start off with the easy overarching question. Do we want to recommend approval of all of the modification requests, given all of this information in terms of the justifications and the proffers and this background that we discussed? If we do, then I would take a motion indicating such.
Yeah, I motion to approve them.
Okay. All right. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. So motion made by Andrew and second by Abigail. All right. Is there any further discussion on the content of the letter, of anything that I missed, or any details you'd like to see? Okay. So hearing that, then it is up for a vote. So all in favor of, I'm trying to figure out how to display everybody so I can see if you raise your hand. Oh, here we go. Now I can see everybody. So all in favor of the motion to approve to recommend approval of all the modifications, given all the information that you heard in terms of the justifications, the proffers, as well as the different background details. Either raise your hand in the app like Martin did, or raise your hand in camera. And if you agree.
We just need Andrew then. Sorry,
Yep.
Andrew Hansen.
So, all right. So, assuming Andrew, all opposed to the motion. Okay, so I recorded 1, 2, 3, 4. Hang on for a second. Andrew Hansen, you joined as well. Okay, so are you abstaining from this vote? I think you're the only one I recorded that didn't vote.
I'm abstaining too.
Yep, Stuart, I assumed you said you're abstaining at the beginning, so yes. Which is 100% appropriate, so thank you.
Okay, so we just don't have, it's a not present vote here.
Okay. Yep, that's fine. Yeah, let's record him as not present. But in the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, so the motion carries. We are going to recommend approval of the modifications, given all of this information. This is by far going to be the longest letter I think I have ever written from us, just to tell everybody. This is going to be a really long letter.
It's a lot of stuff in there, yeah.
Yes, especially because I have to do every modification individually.
Yeah.
So it's
Matches the length of
paragraph.
approval, so.
That's fine. I like to write. It's no problem. So, okay. Well, that closes out this agenda item. So, Annie, thanks for attending. Appreciate your time.
Thanks,
Stuart,
Aaron.
thanks for your input as well.
Thank
I'll put
you.
my other hat back on now.
Okay, perfect. All right. So next on our agenda, we have several updates. So, Mark, turning it over to you.
Yeah, so like y'all had seen, is our last meeting was back in September. And over these past couple months, I did get a couple phone calls from individuals from the public asking if the committee is still on, or still meeting, or why aren't they meeting? And so just clarified for the public, and I did want to just take this opportunity then to let you all know that we are interpreting, or letting back up to, is now that the master plan and the committee, you all have been codified, you're in Article 3 of the code. It does very specifically lay out what your roles and responsibilities are. And so those roles are reviewing sketch plans, preliminary plans, and anything related to the incentive program, if it's for the 2024 plan. As you saw this evening, we also call it the bonus program from the 2016 plan before. So let's put that in one bucket. That's our development project bucket that you all are responsible for providing an opinion on. Then we also have the OTC master plan bucket. You guys completed that work last year when it got adopted in 2024, or I should say early this year. And so we plan on updating that plan in another 4 or 5 years. So we can put that responsibility aside for now. Unless there is something very specific that you all don't think is working, we can certainly put that on an agenda and discuss it. But really, for the most part, we can put that aside for a couple more years. Then another item that you all are responsible for is the annual report. In the past, we would do the annual report over the late summer, early fall, and it would be sort of a statistical report out of number of building permits, occupancy permits, how many projects have been approved, what you all discussed as a committee throughout the year, as well as some other metrics. Now that we've switched to a master plan that lays out a vision, goals, policy, strategies to address issues within OTC, the annual report will now look like an evaluation of those strategies. So how are we implementing those strategies? Have we made any progress? Or if we haven't made any progress on those strategies, we provide an explanation of why. So because the master plan was adopted in March, became effective in March, we do plan on providing that new style annual report in March or in the springtime for you all to then review. So again, sort of putting that aside for a yearly thing that we'll do in the springtime. The last thing that's within your purview is establishing some bylaws, how you all will operate roughly, that where it's not explicitly noted in the code. And so once the master plan was adopted last March, if you remember, we did sort of brush off the bylaws. We updated them, made some changes to reflect what the code now states, and maybe fill in some other gaps. So we can put that aside. We can lump that in the master plan bucket and sort of set that aside unless, again, there are any major issues with that. So sort of summarizing here, is the only thing that's really within your purview on a monthly basis are these development projects. And so when there aren't development projects that are shared with us on behalf of developers, we will go ahead and cancel a meeting. Okay. Now, with that said, there may still be community meetings for development projects within the Odenton Town Center. Those may be where a developer may be requesting a modification to the code. because that's outside of your purview, they are not required to come to the Odenton Town Center Advisory Committee. Okay. So in those situations, we will let you all as the committee members, we recognize you as representatives of the community. So we'll let you know when there are these types of community meetings, and maybe you can share those with the community, or who your friends, family, neighbors. We do also put those types of meetings up on the website for interested parties as well. So it's not like you guys are the only sort of conduit for this information. It is out there. It's transparent. In fact, property owners within 300 feet actually do get notice of these meetings as well. Okay, so again, just wanted to recap that and sort of let you know sort of how we're interpreting the code and how we're moving forward with these types of meetings, because we want to make sure that we do use your time efficiently here going forward. Okay. Any questions on that before we talk about then? I sort of see this updates as two parts, the OTCAC role and future meetings. But before I move on to that, any questions about how your role is outlined in the code?
Mark?
Yeah.
Martin. We talked about this briefly earlier, but it would be good if we didn't have any development projects to review, that maybe the committee still meets on occasion, if, it's a long stretch where there's no development projects, but rather than just not meet, it would be good, I think, for us to assess where we are. As part of the annual report, as you mentioned, there are a lot of things that people may want to discuss in that regard about how effective we have been. Has it turned out what we expected to see? Are we seeing things in the town center evolving as we expected? If not, why not? Well, what's happening there? So that we can, I think, address some of the concerns that Stuart had when he showed some of those pictures in Odenton. It's quite depressing, and I see that myself. And, we don't want that. It'd be nice to create a better vision, which is in our master plan, a vision statement. So how are we doing, achieving that mission, that vision? So maybe at some point we could have a meeting, if there are no developers still, maybe in person, where we talk about free discussion about where are we, how did we do, how can we make it better, etc. What is the vision that we've been able to achieve? If not in line with what we anticipated, why not? Those kind of things. So
yeah,
maybe we can do that.
Broken down into the strategies, right? Those are the more tangible things that we can actually measure, rather than trying to measure whether we're accomplishing the vision. It's those individual strategies that really make up the policy, the goal, and ultimately the vision. So that's why I think really your idea of evaluating how the committee is doing, or how the OTC is taking shape and accomplishing the vision, the perfect vehicle to do that is during our annual report review that we'll do in the spring. But I think your point is if the committee can start thinking about that, review the master plan, go through the strategies, and like we will do, the Office of Planning and Zoning will do, and I would hope that we're on the same page of how well these are being implemented, or how they're being accomplished, but it's certainly open for interpretation and discussion. So yeah, if the committee wants to start thinking or reviewing the master plan, looking at the strategies, and start thinking about any discussion points, I think that would be helpful then, so that we can hit the ground running in March or April.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I think one of the things that needs to be tied into our committee, look, I'd love to sit down and go through development process and the thinking process of a user on a property in Odenton Town Center and give you an idea of what they're looking at, because you're making decisions for users of properties. That's what you're doing, and it doesn't always jive, and they go elsewhere. It's as simple as, it's really pretty simple as that. And I think it's really important. I know we had a presentation that was sent to us, Mark, I don't remember, was sent to us about developer came in and talked to folks at the county about various development processes and what they look at and why they don't want to have a parking lot hidden behind a building, because a full parking lot shows activity. You can't really see through a storefront and know that that store is busy and it's active, and that draws additional people. So little things like that. But I think economic development needs to be involved. What is the county doing to promote Odenton? They promoted Arundel Mills. They promoted Crofton. Odenton, not sure they're doing that. And I'd have to be proven elsewise. Now, I do know, and I appreciate that they did attend the ICSC meetings that were held in Washington, or the local level ICS meetings. There's one in New York this week, right now, as a matter of fact. I don't know whether they're there or not. And then the big convention is May every year. And I know the county was represented there. How, I don't know. But it's real important for us to understand what the users are looking for and make sure that our policies don't inhibit them to come to our town and put down their wares, but that we encourage it. And I'm not sure that's happening too much. So I think that that's just another part of it, is really understanding some of the policies we're making are going to prevent the things that we want to happen. And it's us, it's everywhere else. It doesn't matter where you are. There's some policies that's going to prevent somebody from coming. I don't know, but we have a situation where nobody's coming. And that's what we got to find out why, and we need some participation from economic development, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, we do have two ex officio. Chad is one of our ex officio members. I see you got your hand raised there, but our two other ex officio members are from AEDC, Economic Development Corporation, as well as from the Chamber of Commerce, Central Maryland Chamber.
Need to hear from these folks. They
Sure.
need to be active. They need to step up. And I've said that before with one of those folks sitting in the room, because I didn't even know that person had that position, and we should know. We should know. So it would be helpful. Chad's got a question mark.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chad.
Oh, evening, everybody. I just wanted to add to Stuart, or I guess ask if you think that there is anything, the fort, its leadership. I know we're doing a lot more consolidated stuff in regards to the schools in the general area, but if there is anything where you think we can advocate better for the type of businesses we have and the things you're talking about, Stuart, we meet with a lot of those people at the Community Covenant. We do have meetings with the county executive and county council members. It would be helpful if we had a couple of Odenton-centric talking points that we could share, because we absolutely do view Odenton as our most direct hometown, if we were to have one. So I just throw that out there, and any guidance or suggestions that you think that we could do better at would be great. I just think we would probably need a little bit more information so that I could make sure that we were carrying the appropriate message.
So that's great, Chad, and we appreciate that offer. And again, I've been critical of this committee on doing chamber activities, of which that might be a little bit because this committee isn't familiar with and would have to find out with. It's more of a chamber that represents the market to let us know what people in the area want. From the Post, it would be great to have a list of services that aren't on Post, or the ones that are on Post are full and additional services are needed off Post, and maybe a number with it. I called Chad a few weeks ago I have some daycare folks I'm working with and trying to get an idea of need. And between on-post requests and off-post requests to the post, there's 900 daycare slots needed. Okay, it's unbelievable. And I got a daycare center, one of my projects, licensed for 40, and she has 8. Okay, because she's not making the effort to get these folks. And I got her, whether she did or not, I got her. Chad's got me the right person to get in touch with the post so that this person in the community can provide the services necessary in the fort, kind of going the opposite direction we're talking about. So now getting some idea from the post of services that are either overwhelmed on site that could be provided off site would be very, very helpful. It would be helpful to me, and it's something that I can get out to the real estate community outside of this committee. I mean, that's what I do. I want folks, look, this is where I've developed. More projects developed than anybody else in the area, except maybe Haley. Take that back. But that would be very, very helpful. And the offer is very, very appreciated. We can talk about that more later.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you could have close located auto repair for electric vehicles, that is certainly a mission requirement. Right now we have to take our vehicles to Baltimore to get fixed. And
I have a thought about that. We'll talk about that. I have a site for that. We talked about it today.
Well,
literally today.
Let's not get too focused on that. I mean, some of the things that we're looking for are fewer gas stations and fewer storage facilities. So we're trying to bring in things that are more upscale, if you will. So bringing in car repair shops is not what I think we had in mind. Maybe it's a need, but I'm not sure that's an overall.
Well, that wouldn't
we have a vision statement.
But there are areas that we've provided for those uses, and that's along 170. And it doesn't have to be right on the road. Auto repair places don't want to be right on the road.
That's not what we're.
All right,
not
so
seeking.
I want to pull us back to
Yeah.
what we are with the update. So it does sound like then that there is a need, because I'm hearing from multiple committee members that we would like to meet, not always to review development proposals. So we don't want the county to cancel the meeting if there's no development proposals. If there are presentations that we would like to get in terms of information about the area. So for example, Stuart recommended the AADC come and provide a presentation on what's just the current state, what's the direction they're going, because that information could be useful in helping us evaluate development proposals. It sounds like there's also a desire to have discussions about permitted uses and other types of aspects that are in the master plan in order for us to fulfill one of the duties that we have, which is to provide recommendations on changes to the master plan. So, so that actually is also a valid meeting reason. And so I think the question would be is how often do we want to have discussions like that? Because lining up presentations can happen. If there's no presentation lined up, we either have one of two paths. It's we still meet to talk about the master plan, or we just have scheduled intervals where we have discussions about the master plan. So for example, there's the annual report aspect of it, but that's once per year. We could say we want to have another annual master plan meeting in the fall. So every 6 months, we have a meeting focused on the master plan. One is through the annual report, one is through just committee discussion. That would be reasonable to make sure we're hitting those marks. And then if there are other presentations we want to hear, we'll get those scheduled as we can, because that requires external dependencies.
Hey, Jason, can I request an in-person meeting? I'd like to meet everybody. I'm not sure.
So just hold that thought, Stuart. Just wait for Mark to talk about future meetings.
Yeah, did Chad have another item?
Before we get.
I did. So Jason and Mark, is just so I've got this around, is this line of discussion about the viability of the committee, or just how the committee, like nobody's talking about not having the committee? Is that correct? Or are we talking
the
about
committee's required by the code, have to exist.
Okay. Got it.
No, it's more, it's more of the committee has 2 major duties And we do not want to, it sounds like we do not want the duty number, it's section I-21, does not take priority over I-22. Meaning that number one is to review the development proposals. Number two is provide feedback on the master plan. That we want to still make sure we have time to discuss the master plan independent of the developments, like developer proposals, to get into the topics that like Chad, you and Stuart were discussing, the topics that Martin was discussing.
And just to add, Jason, to the presentation aspect of the meetings. I mentioned this before, and maybe we can work this out. And Mark, I know we talked about this too, is looking at other town centers and how they've performed. How did they do in meeting their vision? What happened to those town centers? Were they successful or not? And we can look around the country, we can look internationally, we can look at all these ideas. And I think maybe planning and zoning and, you know, other people, Mark, in your group, have done some of that perhaps. But maybe for this committee, it would be, you know, useful to understand how these town centers go and what some new ideas might be we can bring in here or encourage. So that may be a series of presentations too.
Yeah, I don't want to. I just want to make sure that we're staying true to the code and interpreting it very strictly here. I'm hearing a lot of presentations, and I want to make sure that it's focused on some of this work and not sort of being redundant with what EDC might be doing or the chamber, or just sort of having some of these academic exercises. So I want to make sure that we are focused on making sure that this is resulting in some very practical recommendations.
Well,
So,
I think by
Mark,
looking
I
at,
think that
go ahead.
the AEDC presentation, for example, I do see that things like that and understanding what these external organizations are doing to help spur on development can help us in the development and review process that we're being asked to do in I-21. So I think that type of request is valid. Martin, you stole my, I was going to talk about that in new business, but
I know, sorry about that. I'll be quiet.
Yeah, so for I-22, I think this is where the discussion about are there other metrics or other ways to look at the goals and objectives in the master plan that kind of fit what Martin is talking about. Right now there's no county metric to say how are we doing against similar rated counties, and therefore the county is not going to put any work toward that type of report or identification because it's not a valid metric for them. However, the committee could say for these specific objectives in the master plan, we think that this could be a metric that could be useful to measure how well we're doing in terms of completing the master plan. I think that's entirely appropriate for an I-22 type of discussion. For what you're saying, Martin, that would be part of a meeting where we're talking about how do we improve the master plan or how we're assessing the master plan.
Yeah.
In order to recommend new ways for the county to look at the metrics for how it's assessing the master plan in order to get actual work items scheduled for that review.
Yeah, that sounds good, Jason.
So I'm not seeing a huge number of presentations, Mark, like you're that it's more of are there presentations from external entities that would help us perform our duties in I-21 or help us make more informed decisions for our duties in I-22?
Yeah.
Okay, we can explore that. Okay, so the next item here there under the updates is future meetings, and we will look to start meeting in person in January. So our first meeting in the new year, or our next meeting rather in general, is January 28th. So we will meet in person and continue to meet in person then at that time. Location to be determined. There are a couple options that we look at is the library. I think they're doing recarpeting and installing new shelving in February or March, but we will also work with potentially the O'Malley Senior Activity Center to meet. So those may be two of the venues, but we'll confirm all that at the beginning of January with you all.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're still good for a meeting at 6 o'clock. Again, that is what that'll be our new meeting time starting tonight, obviously. Moving on to development projects. Again, as the committee, you all have this. I'll have to verify to make sure that the latest version is up on the website. But again, very few updates. Just looking over the list, if there is anything specifically or anything major, the Starbucks there on the corner of Baldwin and 175, which Annie had shown one graphic with the overlay of that project on top of the vacant site. The final plan, it is condition approval. That was as of last month. The Odenton Junction project that you all heard about over the summer. It's a workforce housing project at the corner of Hale and Town Center Boulevard. And I think part of it is also fronting on 175. They did submit their application because, and it's actually two applications because it's Dare Street that breaks the project into two. So when you don't have a contiguous site, or when your properties aren't contiguous, you do actually have to submit two different projects. So that's why we see it as two different projects here. And they are requesting similar modifications, activity space and forest conservation for both of those projects. But again, you can look at it as one project, right? It's just two applications. And then I think lastly is number 12, the Academy Lots project. That was that 2/2 or townhome project at the northern end of Baltimore Avenue. That was formerly the daycare center. They just had the pretty standard project name of Academy Lots and their lot numbers. That's now known as Mary's Meadows. So those are the major updates, again, that we do quarterly. So sometimes you don't often see a lot of earth-shattering updates during that time frame. So,
Question mark.
yep.
What's the latest status on the flats development on 170 there?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything new for that project.
They were instrumental in getting the railroad tracks removed for that pathway there, which is fantastic. But I know when they do make presentations to our committee, it's always exciting to hear what they're planning to do. And it
Sure.
seems like it just kind of has gone dormant for a while. I'm not sure if there's activity or what.
Yeah, I don't have an update
I
on
can
that.
comment on that. I spoke to the owner, probably 4 or 5 weeks ago, and they are in the process. Maybe they already have, maybe they haven't, but in submitting their final submission. You. So that's where they are right now. And again,
Okay.
everybody, it just shows you how long these things take. Sometimes there's a good reason for it, and sometimes there isn't. And I'm going to step off there with that comment.
Well, thanks, Stuart.
Yeah, sure. Well,
Sorry, Mark.
I have an update when Jason's
Okay. Yeah, I mean, maybe we can get an update from the Academy Yard folks, and I'm not sure what you're applying, Stuart, but maybe we can share that with the group later. Okay, the next item then is the Region 5 plan, if there were any other questions or comments about the development project update. So the Region 5 Stakeholder Advisory Committee, they kicked off in October, their first meeting amongst 3 regions. They have actually now had one meeting last month where we provided some context with land use history and had the group map some assets and items that need to be fixed within the region. The next meeting for the Stakeholder Advisory Committee is next Wednesday evening. That's also at the O'Malley Senior Activity Center at 5:30 p.m. And we'll be discussing the environment as well as recreation and park issues. So the structure for that meeting is having two presentations, one by our Bureau of Watershed Protection and Restoration, and another by our Recreation and Parks representative. And then we'll have a discussion about sort of identifying very specifically what the issues are that need to be fixed or enhanced or maintained within the region, and identify potential strategies of how to address those issues, or again leverage those opportunities. Again, looking ahead is it, and just bring up our schedule. So that's December, and then January is when we're actually going to be having a housing and Odenton Town Center discussion, because one thing that we looked at with the region plan is a holding capacity, where we try to analyze, is there enough capacity within the zoning districts to accommodate the projected amount of households in the future? And as you can imagine, folks really don't want a lot of growth along the Route 3 corridor. There's enough development, and we do try to focus development to the Odenton Town Center. So we'll be having a couple presentations by a market rate housing developer, as well as Aaron Karpowitz from our sort of affordable housing arm of the county to present. And then I'll also be doing a presentation on Odenton Town Center and sort of what the vision is for this area. Again, just sort of looking ahead, in February, we'll have a discussion on the Maryland 3 corridor, as well as economic development. March is schools. And then in April is when we'll start talking about land use and zoning. And again, is really when the master plan was completed, or adopted, I should say, there is one graphic within the plan that gives guidance as to how the Odenton Town Center will be rezoned. And we're not looking at major changes. It's just sort of aligning zoning lines to property boundaries, because they may have shifted over the past so many years, or making some minor tweaks here and there, maybe adding a parcel to the Odenton Town Center or removing a parcel sort of along the edges, but nothing too major. So again, I just want to sort of give you the big lay of the land here of what's coming up, a few topical meetings, and then in the springtime is where we actually sort of the rubber hits the road here and we start talking about zoning for Region 5. So
Mark, quick question. You mentioned the Region 5 meeting on Wednesday. That's this week?
that's next week, the 18th.
Oh, rats. Okay.
I just want to remind everybody, if you want to file for rezoning of a personal property you have or business property you have, until Monday at midnight. So get those applications in if you're interested. It's a very, very easy application to fill out. So just a reminder there. And when you're ready, I have an update from State Highways on the sidewalk project.
Yeah, that's all I had for the Region 5 plan.
So I received a letter from MDOT dated November 7th, received December 4th, U.S. Postal Service. And it's basically notifying property owners along 175 from Sappington Station to Maryland 170 that they're going to be doing surveys out there, utility surveys, easement surveys, etc. Which again, there's nothing mentioned. That's part of it. There's nothing mentioned of crossings. I have done the best I can to reiterate to the state the feelings of the committee regarding crossings down along the shopping center, and also where the new Taco Bell is going to go. We mentioned that as a committee, all the way down to Maryland 170. I've been told that they're still going to put sidewalks on both sides of the street. I'm not 100% sure if that's the case, to be honest with you. I haven't seen any plans. I did look up on the MDOT, because this is a state highway and a state project. I did look up on the MDOT website, and didn't get much more information than I've already told everybody about. If you'd like to write down the project number, I'd be happy to give it to you, and you guys can look at it whenever you like and for updates. But it's project AA 057 M as in mouse 21. So that's the sidewalk project. So anyway, that's what they're doing: utility lines, easement lines, drains, storm drain structures, environmental features, topography data, utility data, etc. So I'm repeating myself now. So that's the update. There's not a whole lot happening, but there's things moving forward.
Great. Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Stuart. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Hearing none, so we go to advocacy new business. I don't have any further topics for new business than the one I already talked about, which was kind of the different meeting pieces. So does anyone have anything here to mention? Okay. So next we go to our general public comment period. We have 3 members from the public still here. Noreen, you've had your hand up for a while. I don't know if you still want to have a public comment, but this is your time if you would like to.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Actually, that was a mistake because I was looking at the reaction. And so, but I do wonder what could be done about all the trash that's on the merge lanes and, all along the highway. I do put in to the, Maryland Highway Department that there's, a mattress on such and such a road, and the local one's 311. But it seems like there's more dumping of trash all over the place in Anne Arundel County and, in my cute little town of Odenton. So that's my comment.
Thank you. So yeah, the definitely keep posting those as much as you can on terms of the 311 and so that way the county and the state both know about it. I don't know what else we can do, unfortunately, other than just keep filing those tickets, basically. Okay. Don?
Yep. Don, go ahead and.
Okay, had to get unmuted. It's always a problem. Are the in-person meetings going to only be in person, or will they still also be virtual?
We'll be able to set up a virtual option as well.
Okay, good.
Okay, thanks, Don. Daryl, do you have anything? Okay, final call for any other public comments. Okay, thank you, Noreen. Thank you, Don, for your comments. And yeah, let's hope that people realize they shouldn't be dropping trash everywhere. That would be nice. So, all right, anything else from the committee? Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Before you do that, there was one other thing, and then we can go. If you don't have anything to do tomorrow, the PCRC is serving the police all day long. We'll be there up until maybe around 1 o'clock in the morning. So we'll start. This is our annual buffet for the Western District. So we'll start somewhere around 11:30 to feed, and we'll go on all day long. So if you just happen not to be doing anything, come on out. Western District.
Where should people go?
At the Western District, right on 170.
Okay,
At the police station.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Brent.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so a motion was made and seconded. Any other comments or feedback on the motion? Okay, hearing none. Any objection to adjourning?
Okay. Have a good one.
Hearing none, we are adjourned at 8:10. Have a happy holiday, everybody.